Get more reflections then. I'm joined by Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, for a conversation. Minister, as we say, Gwafemini kwaZulu, it's an expression that we'll keep saying because it really captures a situation where the nation feels that, we are left stranded as a people, in that umthunzi okuthamela asisenawo. We are left really in a dark place in terms of the sorrow that we feel. Your own personal reflections before we talk about the institutions, the institution of traditional leadership.
Yes, it's as you say, impela ukhothama kwenkosi kwenza ukuthi kuhlwe mina. I'm very sad. I was shocked because I'd been following the progress, and I thought at some stage it was getting better, but obviously it was not to be. So I was shocked and felt very sad about just the void that he is living amongst all of us, not only as a nation, as the Zulus, but also just at a personal level. I really felt this is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just your own reflections as well as, you as someone who is Zulu and coming from that area of KwaZulu-Natal where you come from, Bulwer, that area of Bulwer in KwaZulu-Natal in the Midlands. Just what did the King represent for you as you were growing up and coming of age in terms of your political activism, but also as South Africa was evolving and the transition that happened?
I think in part, just the Zulu kingdom represented gave us a sense of pride as a people. And the fact that, like many others, we really fought as a people against colonization, against the colonizers. And so the kingdom represented the continuation of a proud, a brave, and a proud nation. But with him, in particular, he also revived a lot of the cultural activities, values that were very useful in grooming a nation, in grooming young people, Ubuntu, values of Ubuntu. But also he made sure that the history is not buried. We all become aware of our history because your history also gives you a sense of self-esteem that you come from somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think that was good, and not only for the Zulus, for the nation as a whole. But he also gave us a sense that you don't just sit and worry about things that are only around you. He got involved in health activism. He got involved in issues around poverty, agriculture, land. He really cared for the well-being of people in its diversity, not just in one aspect of culture. But he understood that people had to be healthy, people had to have food, people had to have land so that they can work it. And also he participated in government. He was the type of king who would call you and say, hey, I went past that hospital or that place and I saw that and that, which is not nice, place is not clean, that kind of king who gave you the sense that he cares.
And
he cares not only about his palace, but he cares about where people live and where people work. He would talk about potholes in the road. He was a king who cared.
Yeah. We might be accused here, Minister, of glossing over areas of controversy when he would have pronouncements that he would make that many would not welcome and would see as being counter some of the provisions of a constitutional democracy, issues around land and basically the issues and controversies around the Ingonyama Trust, for example, and also a few years ago we saw the controversies that came around issues to do with foreign nationals in South Africa. But at the same time, I mean, as much as he was, a king, he was also human.
Of course. I always say, every beautiful rock has its fault lines. So he, as well, was a beautiful rock with its own fault lines. But I think what is more important is to look at what we learned from him. He was a very straightforward person. He spoke his mind. You didn't guess where he stood on an issue. He spoke his mind. On the question of land, I think South Africans fought for land in this country. The struggle for that black people waged in this country was around land, dispossession of land. So I don't think when he talks about land, it's controversial. It's something that everybody fought for, against the dispossession of our land. But also, in Parliament, there is a bill about expropriation of land without compensation. So that part, I don't see it as controversial.
Yeah. Minister, I know that it's early days in terms of, cabinet and yourselves as the government leadership finalizing the processes for the mourning period going forward, as well as arrangements for the type of funeral that His Majesty will receive. But I have no doubt that it will be, befitting of his stature.
Well, it has to be. I'm sure those processes are ongoing, but he would have to be, we'll have to bid him farewell in a befitting manner of who he was and what he stood for.
And lastly, Minister, just the institution of traditional leadership. Of course, this is from the legacy of our transition from apartheid to democracy, and the importance that was placed in ensuring that institutions of traditional leadership continue to be recognized. And this is why King Goodwill Zwelithini was recognized as he was within the government, the democratic government of South Africa, including the government of KwaZulu-Natal. What will be your contribution to the conversation that has to do with generally and broadly the esteem of traditional leadership? A direct question, there will be some who will be saying, not all kings are recognized as the late King Goodwill Zwelithini has been. And I ask you this, unfortunately at this time, but it is within your portfolio, and I imagine that it continues to exercise your mind as you reflect on some of these issues.
Yes, it's something that has been raised as you are raising. But I think it's important for the nation to understand how this works. Each province recognizes the kings. Even when the king is to be installed, it's the province that informs the national that this has been a decision. And then the the president then does what he needs to do. So even the way King Zwelithini's budget went, it was a provincial budget. It was the province that decided that's how they want to treat their king. So each province decides how they want to deal with the king. But of course, King Zwelithini was fortunate in the sense that he was the only king here in KZN. There weren't many kings like in some of the provinces, like the Eastern Cape, where they have many kings. So it's not necessarily the national that decides. There are issues that national decides, but the budget that goes to the royal family is decided by the province. But we do want our kings to live decent lives, to be respected, because if we've agreed that that's the institution that must continue and it's in the constitution, then it must be treated with dignity.
All right, Minister, thank you so much for your time and your reflections here on ENCA. Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, reflecting on the legacy of the late AmaZulu King Goodwill Zwelithini Zulu. In fact, tributes continue to be paid following the passing on of the AmaZulu King.